Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Hi everybody and welcome to The Garage, the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux, Peter Clayton's behind the camera. And here we are, Monday after a weekend to remember. And I think, Pete, can you find that Warren Mundine bit where he lets the press have it?
The outburst, yes.
The outburst?
I've got it, yes.
I've never seen him lose his cool. It was a weekend full of interesting things to comment on, and I promise you that today will be the last day we're going to be talking about this, because we've talked about it, and I'm sure you're tired of it, and I know I am tired of it. I'm talking about this referendum. But faith in my fellow Australian was well placed. It's over, hopefully never to return, but you can't say that. These people have an agenda, and they happen to be in power at the moment. But what a great tribute to the common sense of we the people. We need, on behalf of our black brothers and sisters, a forensic audit to find out exactly where the billions and billions of dollars of taxpayers' money actually goes. And of course the mining royalties. This will make a huge difference if we can get at the truth. This is not being demanded or even talked about by the mainstream media. They never mention it. I think they're probably either too young or too inexperienced. I think this is probably what Warren Mundine was getting at when he let fly the other night. Anyway, they're young or inexperienced, but that's being kind. I don't know. What is needed now? Forensic investigation.
Did you hear Peter Dutton say, talking about this exact subject, he said, these billions, it starts out like a funnel.
And ends up a trickle.
Yeah. And that's a very good analysis.
Well, and people are noticing and they are commenting, and maybe somebody will actually go and look. I certainly hope so. And next, we need to determine that the NIAA, right, established years ago to do exactly what The Voice was trumpeted to do at a cost of $4 billion a year, 1,300 employees, no one seems to mention them at any level. Their job was and is to be the voice for Aboriginals. The NIAA may as well be invisible or non-existent. Well, enough's enough. Make no mistake, this referendum was a massive, massive diversion and waste of money. Simply because this Prime Minister made it an election promise. What about the $275 reduction in our electricity bills, Prime Minister? What about that? Media bring that up? No? Oh, we'll just skip over that one. There are some promises. I suppose there are, what do they say? There are hardcore promises and softcore promises. Well, you can tell where the electricity bill went. Well, I won't forget it anyway. Now, this is the man who would implement the Uluru Statement from the Heart without even reading it, which, if the yes vote had got up, we would be stuck with. A horrific document which virtually gave this country to a handful of radical activists. I would impeach the man if I could. Nobody seems to be talking like that except me. We don't even get questioned. I have no idea where the media's at. I don't know who's a bigger disappointment, the media or the government. Anyway, we watched the ABC coverage. Of course, it wasn't a coverage, it was a wake, a kind of a pity party. Poor me. They didn't pretend to be anything other than devastated. What a disaster. I mean, so out of touch is the national broadcaster that they still don't get it. The entire management, at least, should be removed. This thing, the ABC, it's out of control. It's a political and propaganda instrument at huge public expense. Don't even pretend to disguise their prejudice. But let this be a warning to the media. Report. Don't campaign. Commentators do that. All right? A wonderful line from one of the many strangely European-looking Aboriginal activists on the ABC on Saturday night. A professor. It's amazing how many of them are professors. Don't know what that professor's of. Anyway, she came up with the evils of colonialism must be punished. And she went on to say in almost the same sentence, this is one of the most successful and wealthy countries in the world. Relating that to generosity to people. Now, does this professor imagine that this country would be where it is today, except for colonialism? In today's understanding of success and wealth, for 65,000 years, nothing. In 230 years, we have created this great nation. Professor? Colonialism. And of course, the colonialists made mistakes. But the outcome, the inheritance, has been fantastic. And this woman is a professor? Behind the Prime Minister, at his press conference on Saturday night, the predictable three flags. I won't go into what he said, not important, all predictable. But there were the three flags, wrong and inappropriate. However, behind Peter Dutton, Leader of the Opposition, one flag, the Australian flag. A wonderful flag. And he had with him a wonderful talent, Jacinta Price. Both of you, absolutely right. Stick with it, sir. You're on a winner. And is that true? Pete, did you hear that the Aboriginal flags are being flown at were flown at half-mast over the weekend?
They want that to be the case. I don't know whether it's...
I didn't see any flags flying at half-mast, so I can't comment. But if you did, maybe Friday, when we're doing our live stream show from the dining room table, jeremycordeaux.com, you can ring in and tell me. I'd be interested to know if you saw any Aboriginal flags flying half-mast. An extraordinary contrast between the inner cities and the outer suburbs and the regions, which is something that the demographers will probably be thinking about and cogitating over for quite some time. I think it could be that the people in the inner city suburbs are the, well, as they're called, the elites, the trendies, the intellectuals, the academics, the celebrities, quite far removed from mainstream Australia. And of course, I don't think any of them would ever have seen a full-blood Aboriginal in his life. But the regions were remarkably against the whole idea. On the Insiders yesterday morning, again the sort of prejudice of the ABC, we lost the referendum because of the misinformation and disinformation and the mention of reparations and pay the rent and loss of property. The argument was that the no vote had pulled all of these things out of thin air. No. These people sitting on the couch can't be that stupid. All these threats and promises came straight from the Uluru Statement from the heart. I mean, how many times do we have to say it? It's all there in the 26 pages. No one pulled them out of thin air. It's kind of funny, isn't it, that they're allowed to get away with it? According to Richard Marles, who appeared on the Insiders, Deputy Prime Minister, the government will start work immediately on fixing the gap. Now remember, the gap only affects 1.2% of the 3% of the population which is Aboriginal. A tiny but important problem, where I remind you, we have and continue to lavish resources and huge amounts of money to no effect, which looks to me like corruption or waste or downright dishonesty. As the minister or the leader of the opposition said, it starts out as a funnel, the money. What did he say? Ends up as a trickle. Yeah. But that doesn't happen organically. There is some blockage or diversion. Hence my constant urging for a forensic accountant. Corruption, waste, or downright dishonesty? I don't know. But while there is no accounting at the end of the financial year, there's no way of knowing. What does this all say about organisations like the NIAA? It would logically be their role to fix the gap. Thousands of employees, hundreds of officers, and a budget of $4 billion a year to produce, as far as I can see, diddly squat. I mean, so negligent that they decided to spend $400 million or $500 million on a referendum to institute a voice which clearly was their territory. They were set up to be the voice. But nobody talks about that. Gee whiz. Prime Minister, wouldn't you be curious? Or is it like the 26 pages of the message from the heart? I don't know. I don't know. I suppose there would be a lot of people looking at this show at the moment who would not remember ATSIC. Louisa O'Donoghue, I think it was, who headed it up. Closed down. I think it was Bob Hawke who closed it down. Again, a total failure. Very much the same problem. According to a recent survey, the Voice was, I hope I'm getting this right because it's from memory, 17th. The Voice was 17th. Was that right, Pete?
Yes, yes.
17th on the list of things of concern to most Australians. It's time this government got things into perspective. 3%, which is really only 1.2% of that population, does not justify or need the amount of time, money and political capital. It's the cost of living, the cost of electricity, which has an effect on everything we do, everything we buy, every place we go, everything. And that, of course, is a problem of the policy of this government. Petrol, housing, population. These are the issues. Prime Minister, 97% of Australia needs you and your undivided attention, lest you become known as the Prime Minister for Aboriginal Affairs. And it's been that way for too long. It's sort of alarming that the only place to be in favour of the yes vote overwhelmingly was Canberra, the ACT. These are the guys who run the government and the country. Clearly a rat's nest of out-of-touch lefties, elitists. They didn't win one state, not one, or territory, apart from the ACT. As I said in the beginning of all of this, it's a waste of money, a lot of money. $500 million. But Canberra's good at wasting money. But here's another strange fact, just quickly before I go. Strange fact, the yes vote was strongest in areas with the least indigenous population. And in the jurisdiction with the highest indigenous population, the Northern Territory, and to a slightly lesser extent Queensland, it was a very clear number one. Interesting stuff. Can I just do a couple of dates? Steve Jobs Day. I'm not exactly sure what that means. And you know, I didn't bring my glasses down, so this is rather difficult. In fact, you know what I might do? Because we will run out of time. I'll just wish you a happy birthday, happy wedding anniversary, and we'll throw to this lovely little grab from Warren Mundine, and we'll see you tomorrow here in the Court of Public Opinion. Jeremy Cordeaux, Peter Clayton behind the camera. We shall be back. Have a listen to Warren Mundine having a go. Bye for now.
Senator Price, can I clarify something? Prime Minister Albanaese said earlier tonight that Lockhart River, Mornington Island, Palm Island, those communities which are majority Indigenous booths had overwhelmingly voted yes. Contrarily, you made the point that the majority of Indigenous Australians had voted no. Can I just clarify, what is your expectation in the remote booths in the NT, your territory, the territory you represent? Will they be a majority of yes or no vote?
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, one thing that I do know is the way in which Indigenous people in remote communities are exploited for the purpose of somebody else's agenda. I think going ahead, we probably need to look at the way in which the AEC, the NTEC conduct themselves when it comes to remote polling at elections, at referendums. I think we should take away those who come in with their how to votes, the unions that come in and overpower vulnerable Aboriginal people in those communities. There is a lot that goes on in remote communities that the rest of Australia doesn't get to see. If we had cameras in those remote communities, at those polling booths, Australia would see what goes on within those communities. There's a lot of manipulation.
Are you suggesting the AEC?
You know what? People are committing suicides in these communities. People are being raped and beaten, and this is the questions you come up with? Where's about getting results? Getting people reducing suicide, and instead of this nonsense that you people carry on with. It's about time. We had a vote tonight that said Australians want to get things done. Well, stop talking about all this other nonsense and actually start talking about those kids and those who are young as 9 and 10 who commit suicide in their communities, and those kids who get raped and pillaged, and people who haven't got jobs, for God's sake. Wake up to yourselves and start asking real questions and making governments accountable.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.